So today we'll discuss something really important, but yet an easy one, and a very easy concept relating to field values. Okay, so we'll see what are these field values, how do you use it, and why do you configure it, right? So let's understand what this field values is about. Okay, so let's see. Okay, suppose once you start building an application, okay, for a particular property, let's say you some drop down or something, okay, it allows specific options, or it allows specific list of choices. Let me put it this way: a list of choices is there, which has to be populated every time you populate that field. Now, for example, let's consider that these values, let us take a drop down. Okay, let the drop down be country, where you get all the list of all the countries in that drop down to be populated. Okay, and assume this has to be modified frequently. So generally what we do is we would either put it as a local list directly on the property level, okay, so that directly I can make changes on the property. Yes, as a local list we would ideally do that. But if I have like around 200 countries to be listed out, so is it practical for me to list out all the 200 there on the property?
No.
No. And also, in case there are some changes, see, when it is a property, then I'll have to unlock it. I mean, obviously it would be locked once the application is ready to deploy, so it would be locked. So in case there are some changes, what would I do? I should go back, unlock it, add or make the changes, then lock it, which probably is not a good approach, isn't it? So instead of the local list, what we do is we try to use an alternate method called field values. Field values are a separate, you can call them as a rule type separately. So instead of having the values associated to a property or something, we create these as separate entities. Okay? So we use these field values so that I can manage them as separate entities. So all my regular aspects of the rules, like your versioning, circumstancing, or the class level inheritance, so all these can now be applied to the field values. Instead of just a data, now I can refer them as rules directly. So they are not just any random data, but they are considered as rules in the application. Okay, so let's see what this is all about. I think we'll directly jump into the studio. We'll have a look into it directly. So let me just log in. Okay, yes, here is the application. Let me go to the case type. Okay, so it says no unlocked rule set versions. Okay, let me just go back to my application definition. Okay. So let me just okay. I just unlock this. I mean, ideally, you shouldn't be unlocking this first one when you have a lot of other things. Yeah. So, but for this user, he doesn't have access to the new version, so he cannot make any changes on this application. Okay. So that's why I'm just going to unlock this so that I can operate on this particular version. because this user has got access only until O1, O2. Okay, but nothing of O1, O2 is available for making changes, so I'm just unlocking it. So password rules. Okay, so now I have O1, O1, O1 available for making changes. So this user does not have any privilege to run the transaction also so far. Yes, now it is fine. Okay. So I was talking about a local list and how you populate the values and all. Okay, so let's see that with a regular approach first. We'll see the regular approach. Then we'll try to use the field values. We'll see what is going to be the difference. So let me just have this section for get personal info. Open the process. So just get personal info. I'm going to open the section. Okay. I'm going to build a drop down with a given set of values. Okay, right. So I'm going to just create a simple property for country, and that is going to be a drop down. For that, let me create this property. Okay, let me create a property for country, and where is it applied? It is part of your work dash recruitment class. Okay, and rule set HRS 010101. Okay, yes, now I have the property. I'm going to save it. Okay, so let me just go back. Now, let me use a drop down. Okay, I'm going to use a drop down and I'm going to point it to the country property. Right, but do I have the choices yet? No. Add in choices for the country. So this is a regular approach that is followed when you have to show a list of entities, be it a drop down, a radio choice, or an auto complete or a search. So this is a regular approach. But we'll see what disadvantages we have with this approach. Okay, yes, here is the drop down. Let me just point it to the country property. Yes, okay. But does it have any values yet? No. So let us go to the property to add in some. So here, instead of the table type here, if you see, it is before that I'm going to use the local list. So wherein all the options that you want will be listed out here. So these are going to be my options. So let us add in more. Okay. So something like this. I'm going to save it. So I'll go back to my section. I'm going to save this as well. We'll run the transaction. So obviously the expectation is that the country drop down would be populated. Okay, it's part of the new rule set 020101. Okay, 1 moment. So this is part of our validation that we have considered. I mean, sorry, not validation. I think it's part of the checked out rule that we made some change. Okay, so yes, I'm going to remove this version. I mean, remove this 0201. I would like to delete this. So it says locked. 0201 is locked. But I don't see 0201
First.
locked. It's not locked, no. Or this user does not have access to it, right? So this user has access only until 0102, but cannot make changes into 0201, so it is locked. Let us release the lock and let us try to delete this.
When we do release lock, is the section which is part of this rule set will be unlocked, or the entire rule set will be unlocked?
No, only this on this particular rule, a lock is acquired and that is released.
Okay.
Not for the entire rule set. Now checked out. It has a checked out version. It's so let's discard this checked out rule. First. So that's why it's always a good practice that lock the earlier versions first, only then proceed to the new versions. And then coming back, then doing something on it is again not suggested. So considering all these ambiguities and complexities.
Okay.
Now you see, I mean, as it is just a simple control that we have added, it is okay that I can discard it and then I can make some changes again. But working on it for the whole day and then it gets overridden is, it's like not a good practice. Okay, I don't have the rule here. So let me go back. Let's refresh this. We'll see. Still part of 0201. Let us refresh on the rule level also. Okay. So now I don't have any rules as part of this. Okay. Next time it is open. We'll see. Still part of, yes, now it is part of my oven. So let me just quickly go ahead, add in my country drop down again. Okay, so let's map it to the country property. Okay. And one more thing is, so each time I cannot, check in, check out all of that every time. So I'm just disabling this because as a single developer for now, I can proceed. But otherwise, if it's combined environment, you always have to check out everything. Okay. Run the transaction quickly. So the expectation is that we should be able to see the drop down with the list of values you have given. So right, that so-called 5 or 6 entities. Right. This process is most suitable when you have each case type. If it is having a separate list, then I think this is right. But use this for case types. I mean, there is this country property. Have a different set of lists for each case type. Can I reuse it?
No.
Right? So for better reusability and for better handling, better maintenance, we tend to create them as field values. And also one more advantage here is the okay, let me just show you this once we run the transaction. So suppose in the options in the drop down, you might show the entire country name, right? Something like Afghanistan or United States of America. You might show the entire thing there. But when the user makes a choice and want to store it in the DB, you wouldn't store the same thing. I mean, you wouldn't store
Yeah.
like United States of America. Instead, you would have a code, right? Maybe like 2 or 3 characters, not more than that. Why? Just because given the DB space. So you set the column size to a maximum of 4 characters, not more than that. With this local list, what happens is the one that you select or one that the user chooses at the runtime is going to be for the selection. So the same thing is going to be available on your clipboard. So the value selected is the value stored on the clipboard. You cannot have any, coding and all is not possible. So that's one more disadvantage that we would be looking at. So ideally, what happens is whatever the choice that we make on this transaction, so the same value is available on the clipboard. Correct. But in case if
Yes.
you need some decoding or if you want some abbreviations to be stored, for the user it has to be different, but for storing in the DB so this scenario cannot be handled by your local list. Okay, because when it's a local list, whatever the user selects or whatever the user sees, the same thing is available on my clipboard, the same thing goes in my DB. Right. So again, that advantage of having some abbreviations or having different entities for different users is missing. Why is it taking so long to just run the transaction also? Close few of these. Is the rule resolution taking time? Maybe I'll just close all this and then I'll just quickly recreate the case one more time. Nayan, we might take an extra like 5 to 10 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, it is okay.
Okay. So I'll just reload the instance once. And I'll do that. The instance is also taking time to load. So just reiterating the disadvantages of your local list is you cannot reuse these entities for different case types, right? Because it's part of a particular property. Even if maybe you can create it on a parent level class, but still when you have different lists for different case types, you cannot localize these values, right? Localization again could be part of localizing your application for different locales and for different geographies. So that localization part cannot be possible with your. Then obviously the one that you see is the one that you have on the clipboard, right? So it's like the exact same thing is available on the clipboard, but you cannot decode it or you cannot have any abbreviations when it is part of a local list. So these can be overcome when you start using the field values.
You mentioned that for a particular property, if I want to have a list and if I want the user to say, suppose see United States of America, but in the
Okay.
background I want to store it as USA.
Mm-hmm.
So for that we have prompt list as well.
For that, sorry?
We have prompt list.
Prompt list, yes, to an extent agreed. But again, the use of this field values is, so these data or the choices that you are having, they are no longer handled as data. Instead, they are handled as rules. So all the things that we have discussed yesterday, part of rule resolution, right? Be it your circumstancing, versioning, privileges, different entities. So all those will now apply for the field values. So that's the advantage we get here.
Okay, so if we
Right?
have it on the property, then
Yeah, go on, go on.
so if we have it on the property in a form of local list, then it will not have a rule set specific. It will not be treated as a rule,
Exactly.
separate rule.
It's like
Okay.
it will be just like any other normal rule, but the data in it cannot be identified, or the data cannot be considered as a separate rule.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, Finally, the instance is loaded, but I don't see anything relating to our country drop down. Seems like it is not saved at all. So, okay. Seems like it's not saved. So we'll see. I think it's like taking more time than. Oh, it's fine. We got a lot of field values for different entities. One classic example is for your case statuses. So for case status, you will see this open, new, approved, or pending approval, pending resolution. So you get to see all of those are your field values. This is a regular behavior that is expected to have entities on the local list. It is applied on the case instance. Good. But again, my sense of reusability and all cannot be into picture. So in that, what we do is create. Okay, so let me create some field values, data model. Yes, here is your field. So here we will be creating field values with the options. So the choices that you are going to have will become the entity here. So they are going to be the field values. and you can have it specific to a particular class. Let me name the label. So label is going to be your options this time. It's not country, but it is going to be the actual value of the choose this applies to this so that my field names will be filtered out accordingly. Here we get to see the list of properties available. Let me map it to the country. Here on the country, let me remove local list. So instead of local list, this time it is going to be a field value. Okay. So wherein here I don't need to define anything, just that you mention the field values, and here you can decide which class are you going to look at. For example, in XYZ. Okay, let me. And which field are you looking at? I want to have the country related field.
So the field name is in that will give the name of the property on which we want to have a field value.
Right, yes. So here on this configuration, you see the field name is country. The label or the field value is going to be your choices. And for each choice, we have to create a separate field value. Right? Initially, it might feel, very hectic in order to create all those things. But the advantage is a lot more. Right? You will have the reusability factors coming into picture. Then your localization comes into picture. Then your the same thing available on the clipboard, so you can resolve that issue. So considering these advantages, it is still good we create them as field values. So let me just show you this. Again, this is still loading. So now we created one field value for one of the choices. Okay? For I think India we created. For rest of them also similarly we have to create these field values. Come on. So we'll see for another couple of minutes. If it's still the same, I think probably in the next session we'll do a quick catch up on this again.
Okay.